So I did a thing. I bought a house. Hi, I'm Jeline. I'm 25 and I just became a homeowner. A few months ago, I decided to buy a house, and as of last week, I am now a homeowner at 25 years old. So today's video is going to be part one of a 2 or 3 part series in which I talk about the process of buying a house, as well as show you like me moving in, painting, fixing whatever needs to be fixed, and getting it set up, decorating and stuff for living in. I had no plans to buy a house anytime soon. In fact, it wasn't even on my vision board because I was never sure if I actually wanted to own a house. I know everybody always says you should own a house, especially when renting, especially if you can get it at the same price. But there are always, I always knew that there are so many other factors to consider. For example, owning a house means that if things break down, it's your responsibility and not you can't just go, landlord, the fridge isn't working. So I was always apprehensive about the idea of owning a house, especially anytime soon. But because of the recession, and because of just the pandemic and everything, the mortgage rates have been at a historical low, and I subscribe to a lot of financial newsletters and things like that. So I kept seeing historic low mortgage rates, blah blah blah. And so one day I was just like, I could look into this. Maybe this is an opportunity to turn this crappy year around. And so I looked into it, I ran the numbers, and it's kind of like this idea that I was just playing with kind of became a more serious idea. So after realizing that it made financial sense, I was kind of like, I could do this. And I love spreadsheets. I love running numbers. I considered being an accountant at one time. So anytime I get the opportunity to run numbers, look at numbers, see if they make financial sense, I jump at it. So it was kind of more of an opportunity to have some fun with numbers than an actual opportunity to own a house. But that fun became something serious. And in August, I started looking at, to run the numbers, I started looking at lenders. I was actually looking at sites like LendingTree and Rocket Mortgage and looking at those lenders. Not something I'd recommend, but it was good for informational purposes. Then eventually around mid-August, I started looking for realtors, and I think I was looking mainly on sites like realtor.com, maybe Zillow or some other site. Eventually, I had a couple realtors reach back out to me, and there was one that just really stood out. She called me from the form I filled out, and it was basically like, okay, we're gonna set up a 1-hour consultation because it's a pandemic, we can't do it in person, but she set up a call via Zoom, and this girl came so prepared. I fell in love basically during that call. I was just I just felt so confident in her abilities because she came and she came with a whole presentation. Her energy was really good, and it felt like she knew her stuff. So shout out to my realtor, Brittany Branch, because you were amazing and fun to work with. So those were actually the first two and a half steps of the home buying process, doing your research, making sure that it makes sense for your budget, looking at your budget, running the numbers, and trying to find a lender. And then second was finding a realtor, because I definitely recommend working with a realtor instead of by yourself, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, because the process involves so many things behind the scenes as well that I wasn't really aware of until I was asking a couple questions about something else, and she was like, yeah, I did this and double check that already. And I was just like, so lender, realtor. And those two steps, once I found a realtor, I was doing them simultaneously, because as I said, I looked at sites like LendingTree, but I never actually ended up using any of those lenders. For one reason, they kind of felt kind of sketch to me, and I didn't really feel very trusting of them. So once I found my realtor, she actually provided me with a list of her like recommended persons that she works with for different parts of the process. And so she gave me a list of three lenders. I think I reached out to two of them. So I immediately got one of them pre-approved me pretty quickly after I filled out the form, and he was really responsive and we talked for a bit. And then because I'm the type of person who likes to do my due diligence, I like to make sure that I'm comparing what one person is saying to the other, typically trying to get 3 at least comparisons. I reached out to one more of the persons on her list, and that person basically responded to me next day saying, we can't lend to you because of your visa status. And this became the first source of stress and an obstacle for this whole process. So as I said, person responded, so they can't lend to me. So then my realtor and I were like, oh, we should make sure that the first person that pre-approved me for a loan saw that I was on a visa. We reached back out to him. As I said, he had been really responsive. Suddenly, nada, nothing, no response. He basically ghosted us for most of the rest of my home buying process. So as a result, I had to start looking for other companies to see if like it was a general thing or if I just could not buy a house. Obviously I could because I own one, but it involved a lot of no's. I could go on a whole rant about how like all the obstacles to doing things that international students and people who are not citizens have to go through in this country, but I won't. I'll just focus on this. I decided to reach out to larger companies, larger banks, hoping that, you know, they would be more inclined to lend since they're larger, more established. And I actually reached out to one bank that I already had an account with. Originally got a yes, but he kind of sounded like he was unsure. So I was reaching out to other companies, other banks who kept saying no. So I was like, let me call back that first bank that said yes, just to make sure. Called back, lo and behold, the next person said no. So I was just like, from there, I was kind of like mistrusting of anybody who would say yes. And when I eventually got a yes, my realtor actually joked about this at the end. I was kind of, to her, I was like, this person said yes, but I'm kind of waiting for the shoe to drop for him to be like, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. Fortunately, never did. We own a house. But until like I signed the final papers, I literally was holding my breath. Not literally, figuratively, was holding my breath thinking he's gonna call back and say, no, we can't lend to you. Actually, at one point, he asked me for a copy of my visa, and I was sure he was gonna be like, oh, sorry, we can't. And then he asked me for a copy of my license, and I was sure he was gonna say, oh, sorry, we can't. And then he asked me for a copy of my social security, and I was sure he was gonna say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake, we can't. But he didn't, fortunately. So yeah, those are the first two steps, realtor and lender. I slightly want to recommend finding a realtor first because sometimes they have preferred people they like to work with or people they have experience working with, so they have like an established relationship. But at the same time, you should definitely do your due diligence and do your own research, making sure that whatever that person quotes you is basically in line with what most people will quote you and they're not like trying to railroad you. So realtor, lender. Step 3 was actually not a step that some people will have to go through, but I was also applying for closing assistance and down payment grants. My employer provides like a live near your work grant for help with buying a house that's partially funded by my employer and partially funded by the city of Baltimore. So a requirement of that is actually to do a home buying course. So this is also another source of stress because because of the pandemic, they've all moved virtual. They were basically all filling up really fast. It was so hard to get in. Fortunately, I was able to find one that had spots and made an appointment. And they were basically only offering each organization that offered the course and was approved to offer the course was basically only offering it once a month. So it was like if you weren't lucky enough to find this one, you'd have to wait, and then you can't like sign up for the next month until the current one passes, because that's just how they set them up. And so it was kind of like this waiting, but also having to wait and watch closely game. Fortunately, I was able to sneak into one. I found one that had spots, and I was able to get it done. Then there was another source of problems, because I need a certificate from the course to say that I've completed the course. I completed the course really pretty quickly once I found one, but then there was this delay of trying to get the course to send the organization to send me the certificate. There are a lot of like bumps in the road. Home buying is not a smooth process. So that was my step 3, doing the home buying course so that I could qualify for grants and have to reduce the money that I had to bring to the table up front. From there, once I completed that course, I was able to, my realtor didn't want me to start looking at homes until I could actually put down an offer. So she wanted me to wait until I completed that course. So once I completed the course, I started looking at homes, which was the fun part. I actually really want to do an open house once this pandemic is over, because I was able to go to a couple of open houses during this process, but it felt like, what you see on TV and what you see in real life don't match up. So I was kind of like, is it because there's a pandemic and they aren't doing all the different things they normally do for an open house, or if this is really what an open house is like versus TV. So I actually included some clips from some of the open houses I went to. I think I went to 2 open houses, and my realtor and I went to see, I believe, maybe 6 or somewhere around there houses. We did most of our viewings in 2 days. So basically the process was, she kind of recommended using Redfin because that's what she liked. So I'd go on Redfin, kind of, enter my criteria, and see the houses, and went through all the houses that I was interested in. And then from there, I kind of like send her like a text or email her the ones that I liked. Also, she asked me my preferences, so she was also looking at houses on her end on the MLS system, which is the multi-listing service. It's basically like the realtors, how realtors see houses, and where all the sites like Zillow and Redfin and those sites kind of pull their listings from, unless it's like directly listed, I assume, with those sites. So yeah, so through my realtor, I was also able to organize, I think 2 days of viewings. So they weren't like 2 consecutive days. It was more like, okay, here are some houses that she thought might fit my criteria, and I went through those, including some houses that I might have sent her, and we decided, okay, which ones I actually wanted to view those, determine what I liked, didn't like, and from there kind of refined my criteria for what I was looking for.
The basement is not finished. Okay. So
this is the half.
Okay. Really good modern update. You check out that floor.
Let's see what's back there.
We're gonna go out there. Do you cook?
I'm supposed to.
You're supposed to cook?
Yeah, I'm supposed to. So I tell myself, but I don't really.
You don't cook?
I cook like probably once a week.
Okay, so this is the deal. If I find your house, you have to make me upstairs.
Originally, I was just looking for a 1-bedroom, 1 bath, but then I realized I could get like a 2-bedroom, 2-bath for the cost of what some of these 1-bedroom, 1-baths were costing. So I bumped my numbers up to 2 and 2 because I was determined not to share a bathroom ever again, because I've gotten to the life of 2-bedroom, 2-bath life. And so we were able to, eventually when I saw this house, I kind of fell in love right away, because it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 2.5 bath, so there's a half bathroom for guests. And yeah, it was just a nice little layout. Once I found my house, normally we would have put in the offer right away, but like I said, there was a delay in getting my certificate. What the delay was, I don't know. I had to send multiple emails asking for the certificate so that I could make my offer. And I actually was supposed to be able to make the offer without the certificate, but my lender required the certificate before he could process the loan. So basically I couldn't make an offer. But you know, it kind of worked out in the end because there was another grant that I'd hoped to apply for, but I was kind of like juggling, do I want to wait for this grant that is a lottery and possibly not get it, versus waiting and possibly losing the house and somebody else making an offer on it. So it worked out because of the delay from the certificate, I ended up that the grant, the date to apply for the grant, kind of aligned, in that the grant requires that you participate in like this, it's called a trolley tour, where typically pre-pandemic they would have people, it was basically your tour of the city and going to different neighborhoods, as well as being able to meet with different lenders or like a representative or a person who was kind of like spoke about the different parts of the home buying process. So from like realtors and inspectors and yeah, basically all of those different people. And so the date for that actually came up pretty quickly and I still hadn't gotten my certificate, so it kind of worked out nicely, and I couldn't make an offer in the house before I attended that tour. So during the pandemic, it actually moved to a virtual tour where like they had this site where you could basically click through different neighborhoods and see what like some features of that neighborhood and stuff like that, as well as go to different booths, virtual booths, and talk to those persons like via chat. So because I got my certificate maybe like 2 days before that, we just decided to just wait the 2 days so that I could potentially get an extra $5,000 grant. And I was actually the first person to complete. We submitted our offer for the house like right as that tour ended, and I was able to do it to be qualified for the grant. And then I was the first person to complete the application for the grant. I literally was ticket number 1. As I said, it was a lottery, so it was like they gave people 10 days to submit offers and complete the application, and you had to also do a quick call with somebody from the company to make sure you had all the documents in and met all the requirements. I actually didn't win the trolley tour lottery grant initially, but on my birthday, I got a call. I literally just sat down for a wine tasting. My phone rings and I'm just like, yes, this is the call that I want. This is the birthday gift that I want. And she was like, yeah, you're no longer on the wait list. You're not qualified for the grant. And I was just like, thank you. Thank you, birthday gods. But yes, so step 4 of the process. So step 1, realtor, 2, lender, 3, actually looking at houses, 3, home buying course, 4, looking at houses, 5, applying for my grants. So that lottery grant was one of them. Also, live near your work grant was the other one. I actually ended up getting a 3rd grant because my lender recommended this program that 1, paid off my student loans, and 2, also gave another grant for closing and down payment costs. So I actually ended up with 3 closing and down payment cost grants. From there, step 5, which was making an offer and applying for grants. My offer was actually accepted the next day. So my first offer was accepted, like I didn't have to go through the whole process of doing any counter and back and forth, or making an offer, getting it declined, and having to find a new house. But part of this was because, and this is like a benefit of working with realtors, my realtor had reached out to, my realtor who was buyer's agent, reached out to the seller's realtor, seller's agent, and was like, okay, here's the offer that we're thinking of making, would your client be interested in that? And she like reached out to her client and was like, so there was kind of like some unofficial back and forth before like the offer was made to kind of make sure that my offer would be like a decent offer, kind of. So once you make an offer, also in that offer you kind of say how much money you're putting down to show that you're serious, which is called the earnest money, and that's typically about 1%. You can do more or less, and that might depend on the market situation at the time. Like for example, right now there's a buyer's seller's market because a lot of people are buying houses. So if you have more competition for buying houses, you might want to put down more money, or say you'll put down more money to be serious. And this money is there because if you break your contract, basically the seller gets the money, but if they break the contract, you get the money back, kind of. So it's kind of like compensation for the seller. It's like, you know, if you're putting down bets, like if you're putting down bets on a table, you put the money on the table to be like, yeah, I'm serious, I have the money, kind of. Yeah. So from there, once the offer is accepted, we also had in the contract that I wanted to do inspection and some other things that the contract was contingent upon. So the next step was actually to do a home inspection, and so I think we had to do that within 10 days of the offer being accepted. So we did the home inspection. It was basically all good. There were some small things that the inspector was like, yeah, you should have them fix this, or like the inspector doesn't really say what they should fix. They kind of just like say all of the problems that they find or note down different things. It's also really good to be there at the inspection because the inspector will like kind of teach you things, especially as a first-time home buyer, things you probably don't really know about. Like we talked about like the boiler and the electrical system, as well as the pumps and stuff like that. Like during the conversation, he also he unofficially recommends like things to be fixed, or like he actually officially recommends things to be fixed, but he kind of like goes really conservative in the report and basically recommends everything to be fixed. But like during the walkthrough, he'll be like, you might want to do this yourself because maybe you want to do it to your own liking, or like this might be a cosmetic fix, so you might want to do it yourself, type stuff. But from there, you get the inspection report, and I kind of like have a conversation with my realtor saying which things I want to have the seller fix, which things I'll fix on my own. So we don't send the report, but we do send like the list of things that we want to be fixed, and the seller has until I think a couple days before closing to do that. From inspection, there is the appraisal, which is something that's required by mortgage companies or lenders because they typically will not lend more than the value of the home. So and it's also good for you to know like the value of your home when you're buying it. But so say there's a house listed for $50,000, but it's valued at $40,000. Like lenders typically won't want to give more than $40,000, and also like you probably don't want to spend more than the $40,000. And so you can use that to actually help you maybe get the house for a lower price, or that's also grounds to be able to walk away and get back your earnest money because it's contingent upon your lender being willing to lend you the money. So if the lender's not going to lend you, you can't buy the house. Or if it's up to you if you want to just go try to find another lender. But typically most lenders just won't give you money beyond what the appraiser says it's worth. The next step is actually kind of like a concurrent step to the appraisal, or I mean, you can kind of do it at any time. You just need to make sure you get this step done before closing. And this step is finding home insurance. And if you're borrowing or getting a mortgage for your house, you will definitely have to do this. But in general, I mean, you should probably do it anyway. I believe that insurance companies are scams, but it's better to be protected than not. So, I mean, it's required if you're getting a mortgage anyway. So you want to be shopping around for mortgages, for premiums and stuff like that. If you have car insurance or any other type of insurance, you might want to start by looking at the company that offers you that insurance, because a lot of companies will tend to offer bundles or discounts for getting multiple types of insurance with them. Also check out if your employer has any companies that offer discounts because you're employed with that employer, which is what I ended up going with because I got a really, really nice discount on my insurance for being employed with my current employer. So that worked out really nicely for me. And then from there, it's kind of just a waiting game. Usually on your contract, when you and your seller sign, you have a closing date in mind, and it's kind of waiting for that closing date to come for different things to be processed. And that involved my mortgage being processed, waiting for that to be processed. My grants also needed time to be processed. But also, I was supposed to close at the beginning of November, and we got delayed for 2 weeks, a little bit more than 2 weeks. Yep, it just kept getting pushed back. There are certain factors, including there were delays with like my mortgage being processed, grants being processed, but even more so, there was the delay caused by COVID, because there was a COVID outbreak apparently in the title office. So, like, this is some of the things that go on behind the scenes that I talked about in terms of needing, like, being good for having a realtor, because your realtor kind of handles like those title office checks that the owner actually owned the house and stuff like that. Also, your realtor is kind of like the middle person between all the different persons that are involved. So like my realtor was constantly talking to my lender, constantly talking to the title company that we were using. She was basically getting all the information from different people, constantly talking to the other realtor, the seller's realtor. So making sure that, and then coming back to me and making sure that I was informed about everything that was going on. Part of the reason I love her so much, because she always, Brittany, I love you, always made sure that I was informed, always made sure that I was up to date. As soon as she knew any changes, she would call me or text me. Honestly, the relationship you have with your realtor, it's a pretty important one during the home buying process. But Brittany was just so amazing. Like at the beginning, it was like we were talking every single day. She was answering all of my questions, even the ones I'd asked 2 or 3 times. Explaining different things, there is this thing in Maryland called ground rent, which when I saw it, I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, if you're buying a house, why is there a thing called, like, why is it separate? So like I called her and asked her about that. Like, it was just a lot of questions, and I'm the type of person who likes to ask questions. She even jokes about it on the closing day. She was like, she showed me something to review and left me for a bit and came back and she was like, what are your questions? Because I know you have questions. So yeah, it's very important. I cannot stress this enough, to find a realtor that you can get along with, that you can trust, because it's a very trusting relationship, and also they need to be really, really reliable and very good at communication, which she was just like, if I buy another house, I'm working with her. I already recommended her to somebody else, and I recommend you, if you're in Maryland, look up Brittany Branch. Finally, a week ago, so what was that, the last week of November, we got to closing day. And on closing day, there was another delay, because the title company, they were having a delay, because so many people are buying houses, they're kind of just like booked up a lot. So my realtor actually joked, she was like, even on closing day, we're having delays. So I actually showed up, I think 5 minutes late, thinking I was late. Nope, she was like, the title company said that they'll be there in about 20 minutes. So yeah, but closing day basically involves signing away your life. Yeah. I always joke that anytime I have to sign a bunch of different documents, I'm signing away my life. And it was like maybe this thick in terms of documents I had to sign. The seller was also there and they had to sign documents as well, but it was like, yeah. There were some documents that we both had to sign, including, I think there was one saying that, I don't remember, honestly. There were so many documents I had to sign. I actually got title insurance just to be safe, because just in case there are any problems. I think that was one of the documents I had to sign. We both had to sign, saying that he isn't aware of any reasons why the title should be wrong or something like that. Which these are also steps that go on behind the scenes, and one of the sources of delay, because the title office, as I said, had an outbreak of COVID. So all of that, and yeah, there's a lot that goes on in the home buying process, and I cannot recommend getting a realtor enough, because especially if you're buying a home for the first time. Buying a home in Maryland is kind of nice because you get discounts if you're a first-time home buyer. And I actually, on closing day, I ended up not having to bring any money to the table because of all of my grants, and so between my grants and my earnest money, I didn't need to bring any money to the table because everything was covered. I actually had money put towards my my mortgage from my grants because there was more grants, a little bit more in grants than my closing and down payment costs. But yeah, that was the home buying process. It was long. I had hoped to. This house was supposed to be a birthday present to myself, and then it's the beginning of December, so it's gonna be a late birthday, early Christmas present. But you know what? I'm a home buyer at 23. Stay tuned. Next week, I'll give you a tour of the house in all its messy glory with all my crap inside.